Welcome to Homeschooling Outside the Box, the podcast that encourages and equips moms to homeschool an outside-the-box child. Hey there, I'm Cindy Renna, and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. We are going to pick back up with our series, and we are actually nearing the end of it. So if you're just joining me for 2021, I've been doing a series on homeschool rhythms. So each month or so, I have touched on different parts of our day, different rhythms that are a part of our homeschool that sort of make our homeschool, it's what makes our homeschool go round. It's what keeps us on track. And those things that we've covered so far are things like morning time, narration, how to get ready, group work, individual work, read aloud time, and today we're going to talk about rest time. So you can see I'm sort of moving through the day. So my hope is by the end of the year, I will finish this series because we've got some big plans for next year that I can't tell yet, but just know it's going to be fun. All right, so let's get started with rest time. If you're listening and you have older kids and you're about to check out and say, oh, this isn't going to apply to us, don't do it. Rest time is for everybody. And when I say everybody, I mean it's for everyone from your little nappers all the way up to you, mama. So everybody needs rest time. This is a magical part of our day. It's ideally right in the center of the day. So for us, that comes right after lunchtime. And it is a golden hour where we are doing things like reading and being in our own space and sort of taking a break from everyone we love so much so we can refresh and recharge and come back together for the afternoon. So this rhythm can vary a lot depending on your kid's age and your season of life and how many children you have and what your current schedule looks like if you're in a homeschool group or a co-op or anything like that. So just the way I'm going to do this, I'm just going to tell you what we do, and then hopefully you're inspired to add something like this into your day. But it's really important that you make it work for you. I'm really not big on formulas. I'm really big on you taking an idea and making it work for your actual family. So this has been one that has looked different at different seasons of our life. You know, the way we do rest time now looks very, very different than the way it looked when my daughter was an infant or a toddler and the boys were all under 10. So just know that this is something that has to fit your life. But the key components to rest time are quiet, separation, and books or quiet activities. So those are sort of the things you want to involve in this. When I say separation, that sounds so cold. How about, let's say it like this: finding a cozy spot to enjoy all by yourself. So my kids, when they were really little, would get a big kick out of, we would call it your secret spot. Okay, now go find your secret spot. And I mean, it could be in your bedroom, or maybe there's like a comfy chair in their bedroom, or they could just sit on their bed. Somebody could go sit on the porch swing in the backyard. Somebody could be in a tree in the tree house. Somebody could be sitting by the fireplace. I'm trying to think of all the spots we go. Oftentimes I have one who likes to sit at the dining table, and so that's fine. It doesn't matter where they are so much as that nobody can see each other. So that's our rule, is that you're either behind a closed door or you're where you cannot see or hear your siblings. So the reason for this is, like I said earlier, it's kind of just to refresh. So if it has been a tense morning, I know maybe I'm not the only one who has those tense homeschool mornings where by lunchtime you're thinking, oh my goodness, let's just get through it. So for us, like, rest time can be a really big relief. Like, whew, okay, it's a great benchmark. We made it through the morning, and everyone just sometimes needs to go to their own corners and just be alone for a little bit and get away from each other. Homeschoolers, we're together a lot, and most of the time, that is wonderful. Oftentimes, that's one of the biggest reasons we choose to homeschool is so that we can be together. However, different personalities or different attitudes of the day can sometimes rub the wrong way. And it's just great to have a place in your day where everybody sort of breaks and goes on their own. So what I see is that on the days that, or even the weeks that we're diligent with doing rest time, there's a lot less tension between the kids and even myself, But when we go days where something has come up or we've skipped rest time or what have you, or we have really short rest times because we have somewhere we need to be, those days feel a little more rushed. They feel a little more chaotic sometimes, and tensions have more time to build up. So the way I started this when they were really little, and keep in mind, attention spans are not the strength of our family. So this was really a habit that we needed to work on. And that's the beautiful thing is you can work on it, but it's so important that you start where they're at. So when we started this, and the boys, like I said, were all under 10, and my daughter, I think, was 2 or 3 maybe, I set the timer for 8 minutes. I'm serious, 8 minutes, because that's where I felt we were, and that's where I felt we could be successful. And so you want to start where they're at, help them to be successful, and then in the words of the great Andrew Pudewa, easy plus 1. So once that's easy, then you add a few minutes, and then you keep working up. And it's taken, a long time, but over the years, we now get a solid hour in, and there's oftentimes my older ones will still linger even after they know that rest time is over. So it's just a practice that you need to work on, gradually. So the way we did it is I sort of announced we were going to do this thing. I made it really exciting. Everybody got their own book basket, and it was this really special, fun, cool thing we were going to do. And I put in the baskets, number one, I put their library books. So this is an important part. What do they read? This is not time for you to check off your curriculum list. So my philosophy about reading, my kids do read some of what Charlotte Mason would probably refer to as twaddle, or the nicer way, she calls it second-rate reading, which she did not forbid. There is a place for that. And I think kids just need to love the whole act of going to the library and choosing their own books and picking something that is comfy for them. And especially when they're little and they're just learning to read, it's super important to hit those milestones where they, like my daughter right now is 8. She just turned 8. And so she's reading, she's all about the Bad Kitty books right now. Okay, Bad Kitty is not necessarily something I'm pushing to all my friends like, oh man, you got to get these for your kids. But she loves them right now, and she's able to read them by herself. And so that's great. Read those. Those are in your basket. I'm not going to read them aloud for our literature lessons, but I'm definitely not going to tell her she can't read them. And then in her free time, if she wants me to read, I will. So that's the first thing, is what goes in the basket. So we put all library books, which, yes, as long as there's no moral reason that they should not be reading them, I let them have free choice and pick some books. The size of the basket is good too, because they can probably fit 5 or, well, maybe 8 or 10, depending on the length. And so what I try to do is like a half and half ratio. So I will pick out some books that I want them to read. Some examples for my 8-year-old are Cynthia Rylant has a sweet little series. I'm going to have to look up the name, but it's something with 3 girls and cousins and cobblestone or something like that. Okay, so there's that. There's Little House on the Prairie spinoffs. There's Anne's Kindred Spirits, Anne of Green Gables. There's little chapter books that are taken from the Anne story. And our absolute favorite is Mr. Putter and Tabby. We're big Cynthia Rylant fans. So things like that. that she can read that I want to sort of, get her to read more of, those are books that go in the basket too. I also like to put some quiet activities, especially for the younger kids, because they will read through those books quickly. And especially if you have just a basket full of picture books so when she was really little, she'd just leaf through the picture books, and so she could quote unquote read, 15 books during rest time. And so I'd like to have, activities for them to do as well. So some great things are like Melissa and Doug have this great what's it called? Waterworks or something where you're coloring with water and then it dries and they can color over and over again. Sticker books, coloring books, sticker by number books. Those are fantastic. And just essentially anything they can do quietly that isn't going to make a huge mess. So like glitter would not be something that I put in the read aloud basket or in the rest time basket. And audiobooks, that's another great thing. So give them access to whether it's like an old phone where you've just deleted everything except, Audible or Hoopla or whatever, Libby, whatever app you use for your audiobooks, or you could be ancient like us and still have a CD player and have some CDs that they like to listen to. I recorded with Jim Weiss a year or two ago, I believe. I'll link to that in the show notes, but he has got wonderful, wonderful audios, and they're short enough to where a lot of them you could listen to the whole thing in that rest time. So audiobooks are really great. This is where I'll probably get some eye rolls, but that's fine. I also buy the Disney book and CD, and there are some better ones too. There's Little House has a version where it's the book and CD. So Scholastic has some available, Disney has some available, but it's a picture book with the disc, and it's the whole, when you hear the ding, turn the page, and that sort of helps early readers to be looking at the page and hearing the words at the same time. So those are all great things for little kids. Now, for your bigger kids who are reading really well on their own, I will usually do the same thing with the ratio especially if they're big graphic novel readers. So I have a son who's a huge graphic novel fan, and so he'll go to the library and come out with, no joke, 20 graphic novels. And so he's got his whole stack. And again, he can fly through those pretty fast. So what I'm wanting him to do is have some of those, but then also have a few that I picked out. And so maybe it is a graphic novel, but it's the story of Huckleberry Finn or Treasure Island, or something like that, where it's a classic story. I know it's pointing him towards good literature and exposing him towards that story. So I'll add some things in there like that for him to look at. Magazines are a great thing to have in your bigger kids or your little kids' rest time basket. And then I like to encourage them to choose. So I do this with my oldest too. They aren't huge graphic novel readers, so they will usually just use the rest time to just work through one novel. And so when they finish a novel, I like to lay out 4 or 5 choices, things that I think they would be interested in, and see if they will choose from one of my suggestions. And so oftentimes they do. There have been times where they didn't, or they said, no, I just really want to read Survivors or some sort of, series. So that's fine. If they choose their own book, that's fine. But oftentimes I've got them to choose one that I would love for them to read. So for their book basket, it's not really full of books. They just kind of have 1 or 2, maybe a biography. The Who Was biographies are really great. We love those. Or Jean Fritz, she's our favorite too. She's done tons of good biographies. So maybe if you had like a biography and then a novel and maybe a nonfiction book, something like one of David Macaulay's books where it's a picture book, so to speak, but it's super intricate and there's lots of details, but it's something that they could kind of flip through, that you don't read exactly like you would read a novel. or seek and find books like Where's Waldo. Things like that are fun for rest time too, where they kind of have some time where they read through their novel, and then if they want to do something else, they can. Mine all have notebooks and either a pen or pencil or a whole pack of markers or colored pencils, drawing supplies in their baskets too, because they all love to draw and write and journal. And so that's a time where they could be doing that too, especially the older kids like to do some of those activities. I forgot to mention my younger one, usually she will have her time in a space around her toys, or she'll bring her rest time basket, but then also maybe some stuffed animals or a puzzle or a doll, and so things like that. So that's fine. It doesn't, for us, you don't have to be sitting there reading for an hour. I do want them to read something, but even if they just spend maybe 5 or 10 or 20 minutes reading, and then the rest of the time they're quietly playing, that's completely fine, as long as they stay in their space and stay quiet enough so they don't disrupt anybody. Oh, and I forgot to say what mom's doing. So this is important too. So I am very big about we all are doing rest time. I do not use this time, and this is, I really have to force myself, because what I want to do is use this time to catch up on dishes or laundry or clean up. And I do sometimes, I'll spend the first 10, 15 minutes kind of cleaning up lunch or getting things ready for the afternoon. But I'm very intentional about having a book that I'm reading during that time, because if a kid, sometimes they forgot something, or they have to go to the bathroom, or they pop out to check the clock or whatever, I want them to see me resting and reading. I think that's important, that I'm setting an example. I'm not just telling them to go away and go do this thing by themselves. This is something our whole family, we're going to pause, we're going to practice resting. It's super countercultural. I'm trying to ingrain it in their minds that human beings need margin in their day. We don't have batteries that last forever. And so it's really important to pause, even right in the middle of the day. So I will make a cup of tea or another cup of coffee, depending on what the afternoon holds, and I'll sit down with my book. This is usually when I post on social media, if I'm going to do that, or I will reply to text messages or return, quick emails, things like that get taken care of at this time too. But these are all, again, quiet activities. I'm not working, I'm not cleaning, or anything like that. I have used it to do things like write or knit or crochet, like do little hobbies, and sit outside or write in my nature journal, things like that. So I try to do what I'm asking my kids to do. Also, we're big on setting the mood for rest time. So I will put on the TV some sort of seasonal, quiet, classical music. So for instance, all fall, we've been listening to a YouTube station that has, one of those cute backgrounds with the leaves falling off the trees and the sound of crunching leaves in the background, and like a classical song playing over it, just real picturesque. But it, again, if the kids walk by it or if they're near that room, that's a signal to them it's still rest time. For us, we do it from a certain time. So we do it from 1 to 2. That is our rest time. Sometimes we get a late start, but usually by 2, we're done, even if we don't get to start it right on time. So it comes out to about an hour a day. Really predictable. The kids know what to expect. One little difference is Fridays. So Fridays is when a lot of our homeschool group activities happen. If you didn't hear the last episode, I talked about how to start a homeschool group, and I interviewed my dear friend Danielle, her and I started this group together. So you should check that out. I'll link to it in the show notes if you haven't heard it. But we have a very active group, and so Fridays, sometimes we can have 1 activity, sometimes we can have 2 or 3 activities. It all depends on the day. So Fridays are a little different. So if we are home, rest time can look a bit different. Sometimes it is watching a quiet show. Sometimes it's just coming in, and we have a park behind our house. So a lot of times people hang out there. So sometimes it's just leaving the park and coming in to play quietly by yourself to kind of recharge during that time. Okay, so some questions you might have. So let's go back to when we very, very first started, and I set the timer for 8 minutes. Okay. And back then when they were little, I would tell them the clock, but it was very beneficial for them to see a visual timer. So if you have an hourglass or you actually buy a visual timer, those are really great to help them understand, oh, okay, we just have this much time left. So we still rested for that hour because the hour was the goal. But the whole idea of them being in a separate spot with their books and all that, that's where we started at 8 minutes. So for the rest of the time, let's say you have all littles and you're thinking, gosh, I would love to just stop for an hour in the middle of our day and have downtime, but what will that look like? There were definitely seasons where I would have them read for a little bit or be quiet for a little bit, and I knew maybe 20 minutes was all we were going to get. And then the rest of the time they watched a Scholastic movie or Little Einsteins or something like that, or What's in the Bible. So what you're trying to do is instill a new habit. And so just working towards that goal, carving out that space and that time so that they know this hour of the day looks different. Of course, if you have real littles, who are still napping, ideally you want to do it during the nap time, but then the bigger kids can be a part of that as well if you want to do that for everybody at that time. I know a lot of times if you have littles, that's the time you do schoolwork with bigs because everything's a little bit calmer. But if there is a way where you could have the whole house resting, so you're sort of sending a message that at this time, we're all doing this. And we're all doing it together. That makes it a lot easier for the littles to do it too, because then they say, oh, well, that's what everybody's doing. So again, this is one of those rhythms that I think applies to all ages, kind of like read aloud. You don't ever age out of needing the benefits of that. You never age out of needing the benefits of rest. So I hope this has inspired you a little bit. If you have questions, feel free to reach out. And otherwise, I hope you have a fantastic week. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening to Homeschooling Outside the Box. If you are loving the show, please head over to iTunes and leave a review. This is a great way to help other moms just like you find encouragement in their homeschool with their outside the box child as well. For more encouragement, be sure to head to cindyrenna.com and you can check out some great blog posts as well as a shop that will help equip you on your homeschooling journey.